Welcome to Docket Decoder. If you enjoy our content, please help us out by hitting that like button or leaving your comments for us. And don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with the latest court filings. One of the more fascinating parts of following the Idaho 4 case has been some of the voices on the edges. You know, people outside of law enforcement, outside of official court filings, who have stepped forward with information. I'm not talking about like the perfectly timed leaks from anonymous sources in the mainstream media, but rather individuals who claimed some connection to the case or to the people involved. They rarely revealed their full identity, but often gave enough detail about how they were connected and where their information came from to spark attention. Some of the better known examples would include WSU mom Kim and Dave, the University of Idaho student, who said that word of the murders was spreading in large group texts and chats, particularly in Greek life circles, hours before the 911 call was made. If true, that kind of information would have had major implications for the investigation and the case against Bryan Kohberger. But at the time, it was nearly impossible to verify, so most of us would just file it away under the wait and see category. Now, with so much more official information coming out, including body cam footage from the responding officers and details about the roommates, the friends who gathered, and the 911 call, I think it's worth revisiting some of those early voices and weighing their claims against what we know now. The video I'm sharing here comes from someone who said he was close to Dylan Mortensen's inner circle. More specifically, his girlfriend was, but he claimed he also spent significant time with Dylan in the days following the murders, or as he called it, the incident. His video description is striking. He says the details he's sharing were cleared by Dylan herself for release, while also noting that there were 4 shocking details the prosecutor specifically instructed could not be shared. This video was uploaded on January 13th, 2023, right around the time that Bryan Kohberger was arrested and we first saw the probable cause affidavit. With that timing and everything we've learned since, I think it's important to look back and ask, how does what he says line up with what we know now? And that's what we're going to dig into here.
Okay, so before we dive into what I'm referring to about the feds screwing or attempting to screw Dylan, and give you a brief background as to who I am. So my girlfriend is in Dylan's inner circle. And by inner circle, I mean inner circle. Like they've hung out almost every day since the incident occurred. And I've seen her a plethora of times as well. So you're going to notice I'm not going to use words like allegedly, supposedly, because all of this is actual first-hand factual information. Where should I start to clear things up? First of all, there's a lot of misconception about Dylan suffering from PTSD or trauma or any of that. None of that is accurate. In fact, when we try to console Dylan after the incident, she's the one that was laughing at me and my girlfriend and I, talking about we're so weird when we tried to give her a hug and stuff. So she's still the same old Dylan. She's had a rough life growing up. She's been through a lot. She doesn't have PTSD and didn't suffer any trauma. The incident that night, and what I'm referring to with the feds actually put a lot of words into her mouth that she didn't say herself first. So there was a lot of leading statements that they were insinuating to her. And she was really scared the first few days, obviously, after the incident occurred. So, like, the reason none of it makes sense in the affidavit is because it didn't really happen that way. So she never stood there shocked when she saw the individual. She was just standing in her doorway, like anybody who opens the door. It was just, she opened the door and yelled at Ethan and Xana, and who she thought was their friend. She yelled at them to be quiet. That's what was going on with that situation. And she just went back into her room. She locked the door like usual and, went to sleep. Everything was quiet after she yelled at them, so she didn't think anything of it. For everyone who's creating these random stories about her being shocked or traumatized, she didn't realize anything was going on. And it might sound crazy, it might sound dumb, but she really had no clue anything was going on. They were being a little loud, so she yelled at them to be quiet. And that's it. She locked her door and she just went back to her room. And she didn't want to be nosy or anything. So, she was kind of new to that house, so she didn't want to be nosy and, get all up in their business, especially at, in the middle of the night or early morning. So it's as simple as that. Everyone trying to blow that whole situation into something that's not. So yeah, that's that. And she didn't actually get a real good look at Brian. At the time, she assumed it was one of Xana and Ethan's friend who was just getting ready to leave, who was walking out. She didn't get that good of a look. The feds were really aggressive with Dylan the first few days, which is why she hired the attorney to begin with, because of the treatment of her during the interview, more like an interrogation, to be honest. So that's why she got an attorney, because the way they were talking to her, and they didn't really understand or believe why she's the only one alive when you kind of skip rooms to get to the other two rooms. So she didn't really like the feel of how the interrogators or the feds were talking to her. And within like a few days after the incident, they approached her with pictures of Brian. I was like, is this the guy? Do you think this is the guy? This is definitely him, right? And they were almost leading her to believe this has to be the person. And she wasn't really sure, but they kind of put those words in her mouth. It's almost like, they were insinuating it so much to where she was like, yeah, I think, yeah, no, it's definitely him. And that's when they just kind of like ran with it. So what you see in the affidavit is, it didn't play out that way. So Dylan's attorney and her, and actually all of us, are pretty upset at how they threw her under the bus in the affidavit. When's the last time you've seen a witness or like a snitch in a case, their actual names being mentioned? The fact that they didn't redact it. We all think that the feds and prosecutors threw her name in there purposely to apply more pressure, because Dylan was really wishy-washy during the interrogation, and with them, putting these words, set in stone on paper, it kind of puts a lot of pressure on her now, because everyone views her as like some star witness, the star of the case. So that's what we all believe, that she kind of is getting screwed over by, the feds and the prosecutor, because now she has to testify and she has to say kind of what words they put in her mouth instead of what she actually believed, and what she actually knows happened, like with her own words, not words that were like shoved in her mouth, So yeah, her attorney is pretty upset. She's pretty upset, but at the same time, she knows that, she can be a huge help in this case. So it's not like she's identifying somebody she didn't see. It just didn't play out necessarily like, oh, bushy eyebrows. She saw bushy eyebrows, and was able to 100% identify him, It's just initially when, detectives and feds came in and took over the scene had been contaminated so badly by the local authorities. When they first came, first responders, they stomped all over the place, contaminated the scene. All the, other people that were at the house, they were, walking up and down the steps, to make sure what they're seeing is what they're really seeing. So, I mean, this is a scene that was really badly contaminated. So to equal the playing field, the feds feel like, having a star witness is critical here. But just the way she was being interrogated initially was, it's kind of crazy. It's not what you guys think. They weren't being all sensitive and gentle to her. They were really accusatory and kind of, pressured, put the press on her. Thought that she might have something to do with it, because it just didn't make sense to them why she's the only one alive. And on top of that, didn't see anything or really hear anything. She didn't want to be nosy, didn't want to, get up in her roommate's business. She told him to be quiet. I mean, the last thing that crossed their mind was people are getting slaughtered next door and upstairs, So, I think that's pretty much everything I've covered. So yeah, just to go over the whole, suffering trauma. She was shocked that she saw him walk past her. Like, it's not as dramatic as you guys think. Like, he was already halfway towards the kitchen walking out. And for all of y'all that are scratching your heads, yes, police do lie. They've kind of thrown everybody around the ringer through this whole case from the very start. And you have to think about it. Why would a survivor, a victim, have to hire an attorney? Obviously, they were mistreating her pretty badly as they're interrogating her, and especially now throwing her name in the affidavit like that. That's all because they're pretty upset she hired an attorney to begin with, and because they want to put a lot of pressure on her from the public for her to be the star witness. But aside from that, she's doing good. She's the same old Dylan. And yeah, no, there's no trauma, PTSD, anything. She really feels for, her friends who are deceased. And, she does beat herself up a little bit about, not being more involved in the situation that night. But, realistically, I mean, something like that's not going to cross your mind that something like that's taking place in your house. So yeah, she does feel for the family, and she's really saddened by the whole situation. But as far as her as an individual, she's still the same person. She's not like a traumatized individual. So yeah, I think I pretty much covered everything. And let's see. Yeah, no, that's everything. Hopefully this video doesn't come off sounding crazy, and clears up a lot of the questions everybody has. All right.
So there you have it. So, in light of knowing what we know now and having seen the body cam footage that we've seen, what do you think? Is this real? Was he really in Dylan's inner circle? And did this information come from Dylan? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching.